So we mentioned in the first session that treading on a rusted nail might hurt. And your automatic assumption might have been that, well, of course it will hurt. I'm treading on a rusted nail. But the purpose of this session today is going to be a short one, so if you've got a cup of tea, then maybe it won't last as long as that. But we're going to have a look at some examples where it might not hurt when you tread on a rusted nail, or if you were to injure yourself. Now, you may have injured your ankle or sprained your ankle at some point in the past. I've got a card here that just illustrates that, and it's because it's the most commonly injured body part to be able to sprain your ankle. And if I was to ask you when you did that, did it hurt? Then your response would be, well, of course it hurt. I sprained my ankle. Now, when you sprain your ankle, there's all the tissue damage that's going on. Your body is going to be throwing all fluid at it to be able to protect it. So we get the swelling, we get the inflammation, and this is the orchestra of healing process that's kicked off. And we generally will have a pain experience with that, as you will have experienced. But I want you to think about a situation where we're going to change the context now. We're going to have all that same amount of tissue damage, but you sprain your ankle whilst crossing the road, okay, on the way home from work or the way to pick up your friend, and out of the corner of your eye, you've sprained your ankle, you see a bus coming towards you. Okay, so we've still got all of the injury mechanisms and damage going on in the ankle. In that instance, do you think that it would be appropriate, or do you think that you would feel pain? That's really my question. What your nervous system is doing in that moment is weighing up the credible evidence of safety and danger. And that's really what this game of our nervous system of protection is doing for us the entire time. And when we have that situation where one danger is the injury to our ankle, the other danger is the bus that's going to run us over. Which one is the bigger threat? And that's what our nervous system is really trading off the whole time. And in that instance, it's probably going to be the bus that is the bigger threat, and we are able to produce an amazing response. We're able to tap into neurophysiology that will probably get us out the way of the bus, and it won't be helpful to feel pain in that moment. Now, what you probably will experience is that you get to the other side and you sit down, got out the way of the bus, and the ankle will start hurting. That's probably a similar scenario to what you might have experienced if you've played any sports, where things tend to hurt after the game. And if we bring that back into and look at this through this lens of what is the bigger threat, then now we've got tissue damage going on in the ankle, and now we haven't got the bus. What's the bigger threat? The ankle. So it is appropriate and helpful to feel pain once we're out the way of the bigger threat, pain from our ankle. Amazing process going on there, where the same tissue damage is going on, but we can change the context to be able to change the experience. Now, that's an example where we have tissue damage and no pain, because if I was to ask you, have you ever experienced pain and not known about it? It's an interesting question, but pain is a conscious experience. So if you don't know about it, then your nervous system didn't produce pain. And I want you to have a think about a time where you can maybe relate to where that has happened for you. And if you can think of a time where you would have had a bruise on your arm or your leg and you can't remember where it came from, you can see the first stages of tissue healing. You can see inflammation. You can see the fact that you've had tissue damage, but you think, Christ, I can't remember how I got that. Example of tissue damage and no pain. I want you to jot down, and that's going to be one of your tasks connected to this, is an example where that was relevant for you. I can think of examples for myself where I've been out running and I get home and get scratches on my legs and think, well, I can't remember that. I must have done that when I was out. But it reinforces for me, yeah, I can see the tissue damage, but I can't remember where it came from. Tissue damage, no pain. Is it possible to have the complete opposite? Is it possible to have, or can you think of an example where you would have had pain but no tissue damage? If you've ever, like me, bit into an ice cream too quickly and experienced that brain freeze, you'd be able to tell me, is that painful or not? Yeah, it's horrendous. But then how long does it last? A few seconds. Any tissue damage? No. Good example of pain but no tissue damage. And a lot of headaches you would be able to relate to are very similar. Paper cuts, very small amount of tissue damage, a lot of pain. Another really good example, and one that I use to be able to, that I want you to have a go with me here and now, would be to help reinforce this idea that pain is like an alarm system, not necessarily based on tissue damage, but as you'll see in the workbook, the definition of pain is tissue damage or potential tissue damage. And if I was to get you to grab your finger like this and take your finger and bend it to the point where, oh, a little click, maybe you just got a little cavitation, a little self-manipulation, take to that point where it's a stretch and stop. Okay? Painful? Probably not. I'm going to get you to go a little bit further. Okay? Painful? Maybe starting to get a little bit uncomfortable. I'm going to get you to go a little bit further. Now I'm really on my end range, and that's now starting to become painful in my finger. And I'm going to stop. And I'm going to get you to do the same, because I don't want any broken fingers. But as long as you didn't go to the point where you just broke your finger, you went to the point where it was painful, you just gave yourself pain, but no tissue damage. And that's hopefully really reinforcing for the idea that we can have pain and no tissue damage, and protection, in this instance here, did its job. It stopped me going to the point of an injury. Now, bring this back to this program, and one of the things that we're going to be reinforcing as we're working through is if you've had pain for a long period of time, we've probably had the time to pass through tissue healing times, and we are probably going to be dealing with a pain problem, not necessarily a tissue damage problem. Tissue damage problems are much more straightforward because we can just listen to tissue healing times. A pain problem opens up a much more multifaceted approach of different things that could be contributing. Hence, we are working like clouds, looking at your psychological well-being and the things that you would have done in the last session to see and try and identify the things that were potentially contributing to your alarm system being sensitized, whether it's relationships, whether it's jobs, whether it's stress, whether it's deadlines, to be able to say, is there anything in there that's in my control? Can I do anything about it? It's not for me to play pseudo-psychologist. We've got psychologists in on this program, but it is for us to be able to connect the dots for how some of these psychosocial factors can be really important in contributing to your pain experience. Okay, so your tasks this week will be to really drive this home, will be to get in your notebook an example for you of tissue damage and no pain. Thinking cut or bruise, can't remember where it came from, and an example of pain and no tissue damage. I'm thinking ice cream headache, finger test. Can you think of any examples yourself?